I was in New York City, and I was based out of New York City as a flight attendant.
You know, life was moving normally. I had a full schedule of flying.
I flew skydivers, did aerial photography, and I finally got the flight time, and I was in training.
I remember at that moment I was traveling to Melbourne, Australia, like right out of flight attendant training.
One of my friends was doing like a grad school thing in Houston, so then I flew to Houston and I hung out with him for like a hot sec.
I believe it was March 15th or 16th. I had a 3-day work trip. It was out of New York City. Every day we were getting company emails about how dramatic things were getting.
I remember I was on one of my company's flights out to the training center where we were going to start, and I was talking with one of the flight attendants, and she just so happened to be an instructor. And she was telling me, oh yeah, this is all gonna blow over. Our company has a great reputation for making it through.
And then everything like shut down. I was like, oh?
That's when COVID got really bad and I was sent home.
I was one of the people in New York that fled. So a lot of people in New York City who had the ability to left to go home, which is Minneapolis for me. 2 days later, New York City was shut down. It was so weird.
I was flying New York, San Francisco, and I was working in business class, and I was talking to a family who was escaping New York. I was like, oh my gosh, like that sounds so crazy in New York. And then I remember a week later, California did the same exact thing.
All of us were in denial about the situation, not because we didn't want to believe it. It just was, it's like an invisible thing lurking in the shadows that just like came out and took everybody.
How do you grasp something that turns out to have the magnitude that it had? I mean, it was very hard to understand that.
Planes were still flying at full schedule, I remember this. And we were flying to Portland with 11 people on board this 180 passenger plane. It was just very, very different from the week before.
We'd have no passengers, and then we're like, okay, well, we have passengers that are coming from the return flight that you're working, so we'd fly there, and then they'd be like, oh, no one's here, no one checked in, and then we just have to fly back, an empty plane.
What did that feel like?
It felt like a waste of my time, honestly.
We were in one of the big airports with a large terminal where you could normally look down the corridors of the terminal and see thousands of people, and I looked down a terminal during a busy time of the day, or what should have been, and there were 4 people.
The airports are huge. Like, you can see pretty far down, and you'd see like maybe one person, like that whole walk.
For me, I'll always remember that feeling and that view down the corridor.
And it was just like eerie, and it was just quiet.
It was unnerving. I think it's probably the best way to describe it.
The airports were deserted. There was no one on the planes. There was no one flying.
Airlines run on tight margins. If the planes aren't full, they don't make money. Fuel, the cost of the aircraft themselves, airplanes are very expensive to operate, the cost of labor. It was pretty clear when you're living it that schedules aren't coming back.
I was forced to work like every other airline person, every other flight attendant, and I said to my best friend at the time, I said, should I pick up this London? Should I go to London? It's my last, it might be my last trip before I get laid off for a long time. And so I picked up London, and the moment I landed back in San Francisco, I was laid off.
My entire schedule was canceled for the rest of the month, and I didn't fly again for 4 months.
It was frustrating. We felt like we had no information. The company wasn't communicating with us.
I literally didn't know if I was gonna get my job back.
We felt like we were being neglected because the people who were ahead of us had pay protection. They had a guaranteed job coming back. We weren't sure if we were gonna have to reapply, re-interview, what the process was gonna be like, and how long it was gonna take.
Like, I just felt numb. Like I didn't know what to do. Like I just packed all my stuff up, just flew home, and that was it.
It's our careers, it's our passion. I mean, most people that are pilots are in it because they're passionate about it. They've dreamed about it, like myself, from when I was a little boy.
When you're in grade school or something, and that's what you want to be when you grow up. And consistently, I wrote I wanted to be a pilot.
When I was at home, not flying, not doing anything, I just thought, oh my gosh, like my dream job is about to be taken away from me.
6,000 of us were laid off without benefits. It was awful to be just stripped away of all of that.
Most all the airlines, including the one that I work for, encouraged people to take unpaid leaves to try and help save some money if they could afford it, and to retire if you were close to retirement.
Our company, through offering employees retirement packages and opt-out packages, they were able to not have to furlough anyone.
Because COVID was affecting absolutely everyone and every airline equally, it didn't matter how well they were run or how poorly they were run, we were all affected. And so if there was no help, the airlines would have started to go bankrupt. And it was clear to the politicians, it was clear to the American public, I think, that you just can't let that happen.
And that was like April, May, I think.
I did go back to work in August of 2020.
I think August I started flying again.
It was super weird because we didn't have service.
First class, they dropped almost all the service. There were no drink selections, there was no coffee.
Oh, also, there's no restaurants open.
There was barely any food on our layovers because the hotel restaurants were shut down as well.
We had a very difficult time getting food of any kind, let alone healthy food.
We just weren't doing anything. We just boarded people up and we're just like, okay, we're gonna go.
I remember someone coming on board with insulin and asking if we could keep their insulin in an ice drawer. And we couldn't do that for them, and it was very shocking to the passenger that we couldn't keep their insulin cold. I wanted to break protocol, is what I wanted to do. I wanted to break all these protocols to make people happy, but I know I couldn't.
None of us took this job knowing that it would all of a sudden become a COVID regulation officer position.
I was told that I not only was a flight attendant, had to do all of my safety protocols, but it was also the mask police.
The federal mask mandates say that yes, you have to wear a mask when you're indoors in those spaces, and that applies to the airlines. And so that's not even an airline policy, that's a federal policy.
I remember Texas lifting their mask restrictions quite early. And so a lot of our flight attendants, as well as pilots and passengers, thought it was okay, since it was in Texas, to not wear a mask in the airport and not wear a mask on board, since you were in Texas.
In my job, there is a lot of people that are much more conservative.
You've got flight attendants who didn't believe in the masks, and you have flight attendants who double masked it and triple gloved it. It's very interesting to fly with both sides.
We're usually a crew of 3 to 5 flight attendants, and we have a briefing, a flight attendant briefing, and we also brief with the pilots, and that's just something we've always done. But now on the COVID front, it's something we always talk about. Okay, like how do you guys like to handle masks?
I always do like the little nose tap. I'm just like, nose, and I'm like, oh, okay.
I've really worked on like my eyes, just like.
One of the things that I always say is just like, well, we have like a rental car office if you want to drive instead, because like we're not going unless you have that on. And so I say it really loudly, and I'm just like, we're actually not going anywhere until you put your mask on. And then the people that really need to get somewhere start yelling at them for me, and it usually works out.
It's just been frustrating having to watch a lot of adults act like children.
I've had several flights where passengers didn't want to wear the mask. And on a couple of occasions, I did have to have them removed before we left the gate.
Somebody gets on, tell them to put their mask on. Give them a chance to get their mask on. That's 1. And then if they don't comply again, you come back a little bit later, somebody tells them 2. Then they get a 3rd chance. And then after their 3rd chance, we bring them this card that's a notice of violation card. It's a notice that you have broken a federal aviation regulation, an FAA regulation. And if now they've seen this card, we've presented it to them. If they do not comply anymore, they will be met by police, and they will be met by managers, and they will be on our no-fly list. It's dramatic, but it's been really helpful to get most people to behave.
It was very, very anxiety-filled, especially trapped in a tube at 35,000 feet.
It's been more trying, but I'm holding out for it to get better. And it is getting a little bit better day by day.
I'm curious, what gives you hope for the industry looking forward?
How quickly everything is coming back. The vaccines are promising. They're giving people that much more confidence.
Once the vaccine started to be distributed, the bounce back of travelers was remarkably fast. In fact, too fast for the airlines to be able to absorb it.
So much stuff is like picking up that they're giving more people more hours. And so when people are working more, they're calling out more because they're like, hey, I'm tired, I can't do this. And so we're using like all of our reserves. And so like there's just like not enough to replenish what's going out.
Some airlines canceled many flights because they were unable to spool the airline back up as fast as they needed to.
The airlines are hiring back lots of employees. I mean, right now our company is hiring flight attendants, gate agents, ramp agents, so that's a good sign, because that means they need more employees because there's more work to be done.
You have to have recency experience, and so a lot of the pilots had to go into the simulators and get requalified before they could fly again. Well, that sounds easy enough, but when you have tens of thousands of pilots and 12 simulators, it's very difficult to get them through and get them back on schedule and flying.
My company owns or has rented all the simulator hours for a 24-hour period. So the simulators are essentially running for 20 hours a day with only 4 hours 4 hours each day scheduled for routine maintenance. So from 6 a.m. until 2 in the morning, there are pilots training in the simulators that my company uses.
To add to that, in addition, the airlines are still we're still using the simulators for the regular training.
It has a rippling effect with the schedules, and like I said, the simulators are booked from 6 until 2 in the morning. It's hard to reschedule people. Yeah, we were sending pilots to all corners of the country for simulator training, and then they were trying to get additional locations if they could find them.
I have full planes like all the time now, so I think it's like already kind of bringing itself back around.
We're flying almost a full domestic schedule. The international schedule is still very weak.
When you come back, even if you are vaccinated and a US citizen, you still have to have a negative COVID test within 72 hours of returning to the United States, and so that deters a lot of people. Plus, depending on where you are and what you're doing, you have to pay money to get the test done, and it's kind of annoying.
This pandemic is not forever, and I have to keep reminding myself that this is not going to be a forever thing.
I think it's important to acknowledge that the pilots are in the front of the plane and we do our thing, and it's an amazingly professional career. A lot of fantastic people are pilots, but the airlines are run by thousands of people that are doing other jobs that are just as important.
Everybody is a person and deserves to be respected and treated nicely.
Whether it's the mechanics or the flight attendants or the baggage handlers or the agents, they've all had to figure out how to survive in their job and survive in the world and stay healthy mentally and physically. And there's a lot of credit should go to everyone in the business.
Just say hi to people when they say hi to you. You don't have to force a smile or anything, but just be grateful, say thank you, and just try to be a good person, I guess.